Hello, welcome to today's mission debrief. We're going to cover the Sabre Duel #1 battle report. I want to start with just the lists we were working with. Joker and I, John's nickname is Joker. Joker and I were talking about just doing a guard versus guard. We both have tank heavy armies. His is much larger than mine, so I knew there had a lot to choose from. Wasn't certain what I was going to go up against, but he chose to actually use something I wasn't expecting. The Armor Company, which is kind of real nice. It was nice to see a formation involved. But when I saw 8 Lehman Russes to my, what ended up being 9, and only 3 of those were Conquerors, I was a little worried. But he did have, I did outnumber him by 1 tank, but he had the Tech Priest, so I was a little worried that the hull repair would kind of annoy me a bit. I knew exactly what to expect with the Chimeras and the infantry in them, but I really kind of, in the back of my mind, didn't really pay attention to them. I knew they were going to hurt my tanks, but I completely forgot about the objective securing part of things. But either way, I knew they were easy to kill. Fortunately, I didn't expect him to use them as meat shields as well, though. Now, I didn't have much to choose from when it comes to tanks. I only have 9, and 2 of those are brand new this year, the 2 Vanquishers. But I only had 9 tanks. But I wanted to do an all-tank list, so I added my flyers in, or all-vehicle list, so it was just nice to be armor versus armor clash, reminiscent of the Battle of Kursk. I kind of love that. So we kind of had a terrain set up a little more open field. It's a little more exciting when you're doing gun duels across open terrain. A little bit of line of sight blocking up the middle. I think we really liked the way the terrain was set up. Now, in my list, I was actually fortunate. I ended up having, when you look down the list, including the flyers, I had 12 las cannons, 2 Vanquisher cannons, and 4 multi-meltas, not counting the 3 Conqueror cannons. So I had a lot of good anti-tank potential. So I was a little worried about his tanks. I knew he could dish out some punishment, but of course against AV-14, it's not. I thought it'd be pretty survivable, but still, he had a lot of punishing. No pun intended. A lot of punishing stuff coming my way. Thankfully, he did bring a Punisher, so I didn't have to worry too much about that tank. At least I thought so at the beginning. As we deployed, he did get the first turn. He chose to deploy first. I thought that was fine, no problem. But I realized later that no, that was actually a bad thing for me to go second. Not that I had any choice. So I did try to seize eventually, but he split his forces up into 2 halves, in what I would call unequal halves. He put all his good, strong tank fighting units, 3 battle cannons and 1 Vanquisher cannon on one flank, and then he put his mixed bag on the right flank. And really, the only thing there was a short-range Demolisher cannon, and then a medium-range Executioner, which really can only hurt side armor on our tanks, and the 1 battle cannon. So he didn't have a lot of anti-tank strength on that flank. So I saw that and I realized I can have an advantage by deploying all of my forces to my left. That put all of my heavy anti-tank weapons, everything but the Conqueror cannons, right there in front of the most dangerous forces I had to deal with. And it put his strong units, the Demolisher cannon especially, well out of range, forcing him to move. Now, Lehman Russell only moved 6 inches, so it would be a couple turns before he could get into range. And I was hoping by then to have whittled down his tanks on this side and then brought my tanks further away from him, reorienting them so they're facing armor forward, and then start taking out his tanks. Of course, best laid plans didn't quite work out that way, but still, the plan was the same. What I was trying to do here is exercise the principle of concentration of force by putting all of my armor-piercing anti-tank weaponry together so they can all put fire on the most important targets, which were Pask and the battle cannons. That would buy me time, so when the Demolisher cannon got in range, it was just a matter of turning the tanks and the turrets and just pouring the same strength into that. Theoretically, mathematically, I should be able to do a couple hull points per turn. It did not work out that way. Matter of fact, mathematically, I should be able to dish out 3 times the hull points per turn that he did, or he was able to. And as you saw in the first 2 turns. Those odds did not work out. In my his first round of shooting, he did move his tanks up as I expected him to, which I was very encouraged by. But he ended up putting hull points on my Vanquisher more than I expected, and really put that out, not out of action, but really minimizing its potential. And the second turn, after I responded with my first turn fire, and only put 1 hull point on him, that hurt. Now, unfortunately, I did forget to use my tank commander's commands that turn. I could have stripped away cover, but I would still only put another hull point on him. He'd only had 2 hull points taken off. So that was just my mistake. But in the end, his second round of shooting took out my Vanquisher and one of my tank destroyers. Already I was down to 4 tanks against his 8 that were on the board. And I was bringing 3 tanks that really couldn't do much against front armor 14 from reserve, hopefully. Well, my goal was, I did make one mistake here. I didn't move my Vanquishers up first turn and second turn. I should have to close the range and get those multi-meltas engaging early, but I didn't. My mistake. By turn 3, my lightning came on. Unfortunately, I chose not to jink because I needed to have those las cannons and anti-armor guns firing at their full effect. But what I did is I brought on the right flank instead of left, and it forced Joker to turn his tanks, basically stop their advance, and turn, facing my board edge. So now, when my Conquerors would come on, I couldn't outflank them with a wide entrance on my right-hand flank where I could get some angled shots at the rear armor. I completely blew my plan out of the water with that one deployment of that flyer. The flyer should have come in. I was trying to go for side armor, but I got greedy by doing that, and it hurt me in the long run. Turns out a Punisher is all you need for any aircraft. That with, it's 9 heavy bolter shots, and a Punisher, that's a lot of snap shooting that can get through. So that's how turn 3 ended up going. Very disappointed. And when my reserve tanks came on, I did bring them up and put them in what I would call kind of line ahead kind of approach. Brought them all up full 6 inches in so I could get maximum effect, try to whittle down the opponent. Didn't work out too well. Now on turn 4, things were a little different. I brought in my last flyer because it didn't come in earlier. I was able to drop a bomb on the Catachan infantry screen, and that actually pinned them because they went to ground. And it broke them up, put them out of unit coherency. That actually slowed them down for a couple turns, and that prevented them from gaining the objective quickly. I think that actually may have helped me a little bit in that. But fortunately, because the flyer came on, and because of the risk of those las cannons, the siege cannon was backed up, and it basically put out of range again, or put it back too far so that it couldn't get a good shot on me. But when the Lightning Strike Fighter came in, after dropping the bomb, I couldn't get close enough to that Demolisher to put wet shots on it. It had to go to the squadron mate. So unfortunately, wasn't able to do much there. But I was playing to the mission, trying to remove the threats to my armor. So again, demolish the siege cannon, Pask, and what have you. Now, by turn 3, Pask was finally destroyed, and I was starting to whittle down on the other tanks. But it was a near-run thing on the other flank. Conquerors, though, couldn't do much against this force on this table half because they could only glance on 6s. But they could hold objectives. They are troops in the Imperial Armor book. So I had them move forward, but on turn 5, I actually brought one of them back so that basically the opponent would have to go through what would be 5 hull points before they even get to the tank that's holding the objective. It's one advantage using a squadron, when it has armor 14 anyway, is it takes a long time to whittle them all down and wipe them out. And so it forced him to try to deal with the threat of my tanks, because he had to get rid of them in order to keep me from getting that objective. Now, he had squishy infantry approaching, so that was another thing he could do, and he did try to bring them forward. But I used my machine guns to start taking down those catechins, and that did help, but it wasn't really enough. Now on the right flank, I brought my Vanquisher all the way up, as far up as I started. I remembered to move him. And that way I could bring my Melta-Guns in range. And so the Melta-Guns, that commander was able to take out one of the Lehman Russes, and because of the removed cover, I didn't have to worry about, he didn't get any save against it, so I was very, very pleased with that. The one thing that was important, though, is again, that Punisher cannon took out my flyer. And so I lost it on turn 4, his turn 5. So neither of my flyers did much that turn. It was really, really bad. So that meant that at the start of turn 6, which surprisingly the game went to, his line had been pushed back by my flyers, which I guess is a saving grace. So something good that came out of the flyers that came in. Again, I shouldn't have, but I did bring him in on the right. Now, but there was time for him to regroup his catechins after the bombing run, and he was able to reposition his tanks to start threatening my tanks again. He did bring his Torox, made sure he was going to hold his objective instead of just going for mine. He had one Chimera in the back that was going to hold that while the Torox went forward. Fortunately, I popped that Chimera earlier. Now, on the left, my left, he tried to run his other catechins forward, but he couldn't get through that difficult terrain. He was rolling 1s, 2s, and 3s, whether it was running or for move through cover. It was terrible. But he did have the Chimera having a straight, clear shot through to the objective, and so he did flat out that and seize the objective with that, which put a lot of pressure on me to knock him off. And on turn 6, the most I could do was take 2 hull points off. It was down to the last turn, on which. So on turn 6, what I had done is I had brought forward one of my Conquerors up so that it blocked the infantry from getting to the objective quickly, and pulled the second one back to, again, prevent the infantry from getting between them and keep them more than 3 inches away. He had to go around my tanks to get there. Now, unfortunately, he would end up rolling a good run in turn 7. But I was in position to hold the objective, and I was in good shape. I was a little worried about Linebreaker. I was kind of seeing if there was a way I could get it, because if I could deal with these catechins, I could abandon this, secure the other objective, take out the Commissar, and just go get Linebreaker. None of that worked. It was a little too ambitious. So what ended up happening is on the right-hand side, or left-hand side, sorry, Vanquisher went through on turn 7. He tried to finish off the Commissar. Unfortunately, I had to pop the Torox on turn 6. Knocked him out. The Commissar hopped out onto the objective, so I had not achieved that objective there. My Annihilator couldn't land any hits that penetrated on the Chimera, and even my Tank Destroyer, the best it could do, it ended up taking, between all the guns shooting, I got 2 hull points off that Chimera. It was really, really disappointing. So when turn 7 did get here, my opponent, Joker, charged forward. I completely forgot about him trying for Linebreaker. I was so used to him using his Chimeras to give his tanks cover saves that he surprised me by moving forward 12 and then eventually flatting out 6. He ended up a little bit further than this picture behind my tanks, which actually worked out in my favor in the end, because during his turn, when he shot at my Chimeras, the shot scattered far enough that it caught his Chimera as well as mine. He didn't do any damage to mine, but he exploded his own Chimera. We're basically depriving himself of Linebreaker. And over on the other side, he could not run to save his life, to get out of that terrain. Just in case that Chimera popped, he was trying to get those catechins around the objective so he could contest it, because I had a tank with secure objective just about to arrive on it, and these catechins would also be there with objective secured. So thankfully they were a little bit slow getting out of that terrain. When my turn came around, I had ended up with an immobilized Conqueror cannon, or Conqueror tank, on the left of the group. And I was able to abandon it, send the other two conquerors up. And that's the advantage of having conquerors, is they do get to move 18 inches a turn. And moved up, flat out, got line breaker for myself. And then just used the conqueror that remained immobile, or to kind of, I was hoping to kill all those catechins near the objective, but it didn't work. Unfortunately, those catechins, there were still 2 left, and they did not leave the objective. They did not fail the morale check. So, in fact, as you looked, I had 6 of them surrounding me, and the heavy bolter, the storm bolter, and the conqueror cannon all tried to take them out, but I could only do 4 wounds. The commissar, I was trying to take him out with my Vanquisher tank, and I just could not do it. I kept rolling 1s to wound. So he survived that engagement. And over on the right, I had, unfortunately, in an attempt on the previous turn to knock out that Chimera with my Conqueror cannons, I scattered and actually hit my own Annihilator, caused it to be shaken. So it was only snap shooting here. It did not affect anything on it. I had to use the Tank Destroyer to take out that Chimera, which, of course, by moving the Annihilator up, I was now holding the objective. So I got very lucky in that one. So in the end, it was a real heavy slugfest. Tried very hard to get position. Made a couple tactical mistakes. I learned a lot what not to do. Unfortunately, hopefully I'll remember that in the next battle. But in the end, it really was a heavy give and take. I lost quite a bit. He dished out a lot of damage, even with the fact that he was only glancing on 6s with most of his tanks. And he did a great job protecting his own armor, his own arcs. I just got lucky that his executioner never got far enough around to the side to start penetrating my armor on my right flank. So in the end, I was able to pull off holding one objective. He was able to hold one objective. We contested another. And in the end, it was my line breaker and Slay the Warlord against his First Blood that won the match. So very close. If it wasn't for his Demolisher Siege Cannon inflicting friendly casualties, we would have had a draw. And honestly, this game could have gone either way. Testament to the Joker's skill. He's definitely a very tactical-minded opponent. I really enjoy playing against him. So hopefully you enjoyed, got some information out of this. Let me know what you think. Share, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next battle report. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.